Welcome to this episode of the Customer Centric Retailing Podcast. This is Anil Patel, founder and CEO of Hotworks Commerce. In this podcast, we discuss e-commerce, omnichannel technology, pre-order management, brick and mortar operations, retail culture, innovation, and how all these elements come together to create customer-centric retailing. Join us to hear the brightest minds in the retail industry share their experiences and thoughts on the most relevant topics today. Hello everyone, welcome to this episode of Customer Centric Retailing Podcast. Today I have with me Louise du Toit, President of Ganni for North America. Welcome to our episode, Louise. How are you doing today?
I'm fine. Thank you for having me. Excited to talk to you.
Awesome. Yeah. We are excited because I'm sure you have a very special brand and your company has, a real interesting story. So before we get started, tell us about yourself.
Sure. I'm born in South Africa. So when I was thinking back a little bit about my sort of history in retail, I guess it started as my grandmother was a buyer for Woolworths in South Africa. So I had a very young start at sort of fashion. My mother worked for a fabric mill. When I was 10 years old, my family immigrated to the US and we settled in Utah. So when I was around, I guess I was 20 when I first moved to New York, but my first jobs were always in retail. I worked for, Banana Republic. I worked in food as well, and sort of food service. I worked for G-Star. I went to school for a few years in Salt Lake City, and then I moved to New York when I was 21 and continued working within retail, and then moved into wholesale, which is where I started with Acne Studios in 2006. So that's kind of like where the beginnings of my career started.
Awesome. No, this is great. In fact, this is interesting, how you got started into retail. Definitely, once somebody gets into the retail, they start liking it, especially if you get into fashion business sometime early, right?
No, it really helped me. It still helps me, that sort of initial experience. It's hard work.
Yeah, I know. I want to come to Ganni and talk about how this brand or this what you or the products you have or your culture that you have in your company, because today we see there are a lot of fashion brands, there are a lot of products out there in the market, and what people find difficult is how would you differentiate? How would you go find your customers and present yourself so they like you for what you are? So. This is interesting, and I see that Ganni has its own style. They have their own unique thing, and you talk about being responsible, which is, again, interesting because a lot of companies today try to say that they are being sustainable. So sustainable is a more common term that I have heard or talked about, but today I'm going to, be interesting to know more about how do you bring in responsible into this mix? So please tell us about, Ganni and what is responsible mean to you and how do you practice it?
Sure. I think we made an active decision not to call ourselves sustainable. First of all, it's a word I don't think anybody really, it's used so broadly today across so many industries and companies. It's hard to really know what people mean when they say that they're sustainable. I think we're also quite cognizant of greenwashing, and that's not something that we ever want to be a part of. So I think we started calling ourselves responsible simply because we are a fashion company. We make new clothing, and we promote consumption and turn a profit. We can't be sustainable. It's impossible, right? So, but we can certainly make a lot more responsible decisions about how we run our company and how we make clothing and how, all of those across supply chain that makes us more responsible. There's so much we could do to be a better brand today. So that's kind of how, responsibility came about as instead of sustainable.
Wow, amazing. Louis, thank you very much for being so honest and so transparent. It's easy for people to say that they are being sustainable brand, right? And when we all know that this is a politically correct or socially correct way of saying something, when actually what you mean is, okay, I'm going to do this such and such thing. And my messaging is all about marketing, so I can get your interest in my products and somehow make you buy it. At the end of the day, we are working in a capitalist society, trying to sell something, make some money. Well, do it in a right way is a good approach, and being responsible definitely makes total sense here for me. Yeah. So thanks for that. So this is great, but definitely being responsible, saying is easier, but then getting doing it is hard. And I know when I was talking to you earlier, you mentioned about being a right kind of culture needed and the right kind of culture in the company to make sure that everybody is doing their part in the process. So tell us about the how the culture in your company makes it all happen, and what kind of force it brings in to make your brand shine and exceed in what they are trying to do.
Well, I think what is very special about Ganni, and was something that our creative director Dita has sort of coined, is that Ganni is more of a state of mind, and I find that the state of mind is quite. We've broken it down into core values, basically, and so those core values within the company are: first, responsibility, openness, optimism, accountability, and authenticity is the very last one. So those core values are something that we use internally in how we make decisions, on how we act together, how we engage with our customers. And those values, I think, really make us a little bit more distinct. I've worked previously in places where a core value is profitability. And that makes a very different company culture. Something that we really encourage is, positivity, openness, and optimism, which I think helps everybody work together in a much better way. We are also really advocating, speaking up for yourself, being your authentic self, which I think, again, is something really special, because when we speak about mental health and sort of health within a company, when you are forced to not be yourself on a daily basis, it actually is really negative for your brain, and it's really bad for your health. So something internally here, being authentic and being able to be exactly who you are is very empowering. Speaking about empowerment, we're also very into activism. Stand up for what you believe in. If you want to take some time off because you want to go to a rally or go to a protest, go. Take some time off, get some paid time off, and go and do that. So we're very, we want you to be who you are, and we want you to feel like your voice is heard. And I think that also goes on how we run the company and how our customers sort of see us as well. We're very value-led in that sense, and I think that adds a lot of value for our customers.
All those ideas that you put forward, openness, honest, be yourself, I would imagine that should bring in a lot of challenge, because a lot of people would try to go in a different direction just because people are different, but nobody is same. So how do you get your company, everyone in your company or most people in company, to rally behind one idea and get things done? Because at the end of the day, like you said in the beginning, honestly, you are here to make profit, right? So how do you make all these things work?
I think being a strong leader. I think being a leader that people trust, that is very honest and can be vulnerable. I think people get behind our leadership within the company to really push together in this one direction. And I think it really comes down to the leadership in that sense, where, regardless of all these different life experiences and this diversity within the company, which to me, I find as a massive added value. I want employees from different and diverse backgrounds that bring their own life experience to an organization, because I need those different perspectives. So for me, getting everyone together to follow is really, it's in the leadership. And it's ensuring that people feel trusted and feel safe and are enjoying their work. I believe that that people work for people even more than brand sometimes. So if they love their leader, they will follow.
Awesome. Now this is great. Yeah. So like let's take it forward with your being again coming back to your being a responsible company. What is important here, like you said, in the fashion, you are definitely helping people buy things. Probably most of the time they don't need it. Actually, they want it.
That's I don't what. No, they need it.
Yes, I agree with you. I agree with you. So like but then like you said, we have to bring in the culture of being responsible at every level. Now there are certain people working within your company, certain things happening within your company, but then there are parts of your product line. There's a supply chain part of it. You are to source the products and then get it shipped to the place and all that. So how do you manage all this responsibility and the idea and the core values at the supply chain level?
Well, first of all, it's prioritized within the organization, meaning that, we hired our first head of responsibility in 2016, which was well before people were actually putting resources behind this. So, that immediately, once you have people working full time to encourage the company to be more responsible, it immediately becomes a bigger priority, right? So 2016 was when we hired our first sort of team, and that team has been growing since. We initially were carbon mapping and carbon offsetting, which is when, so you're mapping your carbon, I'm sure mapping your carbon, and then you are, paying a bill at the end of the year, right? You pay a bill, and that money is going toward a project that is supposed to reduce carbon emissions somehow. It's really like pay to play. I mean, I really hate it. So what we started doing was carbon insetting. Which is when we are trying to reduce our carbon footprint across every touch point across the brand. A real tangible way that I could give you an example is this year we will supply and pay to have solar panels installed at some of our key factories and manufacturing plants so that they can actually be using solar power and to reduce their carbon. That's a very obvious and tangible way. We're also reducing our plastics and our plastic consumption. There's no new plastic being put through our company. By the end of 23, we'll be doing no more virgin animal leather. So everything will be recycled leather or leather alternatives like grapes, mushrooms, mycelium. All of these sort of we call them fabrics of the future. So that's another way that we're reducing. Another point that I think is really helping us get to the next level is that we have responsible fabrics. And for us, that means that at least 50% of our fabrics are either organically made or they're made of recycled fibers, so that we're not actually producing and making new fabrics. Because that's where the most of your carbon, once you map, is in the production of new fabrics. So if you can reduce that down so that you're making that the majority of your fabrics are actually recycled, you're making a massive impact. So that for this season coming up, we'll have almost 90% of all of our fabrics will be responsibly made, meaning recycled or organic. So that's already a massive reduction for us. So it's really, when we say responsible, it's really, and carbon insetting, it's really about making lots of different changes across all different levels of the company to make a big impact, rather than, writing the check at the end of the year and being like, okay, now we're sustainable, So that's the sort of difference I think that we're seeing. And that's the big change that we've made within the organization the last, 3, 4, 5 years.
This is really good. I like that idea that you're not just paying a tax at the end of the year and be done with it. Instead, taking a responsible steps of. I especially like what you said is using more organic in fabric and then recycled fabric. That is very important. And then use of plastic. This is something that I always find it hard to accept that about 40, 50 years ago or 60 years ago there was no plastic. Pretty much there was nothing out there, and in 50, 60 years how much plastic we have started to use. Even the cucumber I would go buy in Whole Food is wrapped in plastic. Why do I need to do that? But like, so really, getting plastic out of our life would be definitely one of the goals. And like you said, not using any new plastic. If we are using plastic, it should be recycled. At least you are not participating in consuming or creating new plastic, which is great. So definitely I like what you said, being responsible. Even in the supply chain level, it takes a lot of effort, and I'm sure it is increasing your costs. For your input cost is increased, and that means your products are more expensive for the users, for your consumers. At the same time, one of the things that I've seen mostly in retail is that they produce more than they can sell. Now, it is generally because merchandisers cannot easily forecast how much their customers are going to buy. And that's why so really, I really want to get to is like, how do you manage that inventory or the stock production, like how much you should produce. And finally, the end goal is to be responsible. We want to make sure that minimum amount of inventory makes into landfill, right? So tell us about like, how do you manage your inventory and how do you control your dead stock towards the end of the season?
Sure. Well, I think the first step is, making the correct plan. Planning properly on like, how many stores am I actually going to have open? What is our sales targets? Because even back to when we are selling into our wholesale partners, what are our goals from back then? And making the appropriate plan is the first step, and then planning a very high sell-through. Second step. Making sure that you are planning already to have a 90% full price sell-through, meaning that you're going to buy, only to that level where, frankly, I know there are brands that will plan a 50% sell-through, where they are planning on having all of that extra stock, because that's also a revenue stream. So for us, that's not really part of the business model from the start. Of course, we still end up with clothes. For sure. So what we do have is we have our own, we've got 4 now globally, our own outlet stores, which we call Postmodern, where we do send, product that we just haven't gotten through over a course of 12 months to our Postmodern stores. However, we are not producing for those stores. So again, comparing to some businesses where you're actually producing product just to go to an outlet store at a lower price and a lower margin, we're not doing that. So that's the first step. Then we're also working with, circular business models. So, I think last year we took about 6,000 units, and we upcycled those and we remade them, and we called it Recut. And we sold those as new products, with product that more value than they had previously had. And it was, it was old products that we, cut up and remade, but it was also old fabrications that we upcycled and made into new product. Performed extremely well. I was a little skeptical. I'm like, our girl doesn't want to see the same thing she saw last year retooled. She loves it. She's actually coming to us looking for things, and she likes that feeling of buying something that was previously going to be in a landfill. So, that's something that now, because it was so successful, honestly, like we start doing that on a quarterly basis now, where we have a collection that's just called Recut that we can sell through our own channels, but we have our wholesale clients now that are saying, we want Recut, So, it came into something where where previously it might have been kind of ugly, like, oh, you're remaking your old stuff into, you're fooling them. But now she wants it from us, and our wholesale clients want it from us. So, I think it's just changing the mentality a little bit on what those kinds of things can mean for a customer and what she's okay with, because she's much smarter than you think sometimes. She was coming for you for something that she knows should have been in a landfill. So I think it's nice that it's changing for sure.
Wow, this is amazing actually. Like earlier you said, designers cannot control them. But I think, this is where you really love them because they cannot control themselves, but they can actually, recut them and make so totally cool ideas. It's so pragmatic. I've seen this. We see all these things happen in our families, right? Because we have something and we cut it and make something new out of it, and we love it. So what looks like what you guys did is took that natural human behavior and what we are anyways doing in our lives at our home within our families, you took it and brought it to a commercially viable business model, which is amazing. And I'm really impressed how interestingly what you guys have done actually.
Oh, I was gonna add that, I think resale in general has also changed the market, and changed the game, because there's so much value now that a customer buys something that they know they can resell. And certain brands have higher resale value than others. We find ourselves at the very top list of Vestiaire, of the Real, where customers are coming looking for Ganni products, and the customers buying us know that they can resell it to a second home at still a strong value. So that's again something that we've launched already in the US and the UK, where we are doing peer-to-peer reselling online. So you can buy something from us, 6 months later, you're like, okay, I'm actually not wearing this that much. And personally, I'm very much like this. It gives me anxiety seeing clothing in my closet I'm not wearing. So I need to put it to work, make a return on it as fast as possible. So this is working super well already in the US and the UK, where you can buy something from us, you're not wearing it, you bring it back, you put it up online, and you can resell it to another person that can buy it from you, and we give you a gift card that now you can come in and buy something new from us at a lower price. So, this is already, it's already happening. It'll come to the US sooner than later, but this idea of resale and the ability to have to know that your product has a resale value is also, changing the mentality on new all the time.
No, this is amazing actually. I like it because a lot of times when we go buy stuff, we are conscious, and we are, especially for the conscious and responsible customers that you have. It's what happens is when they're buying new, they're conscious that I already have 3 things in my closet that I'm not using as much, and they are having that guilt and all that feeling. Making it possible for customers to be able to recycle, reuse them, or repair them, get them, get someone else to use it, actually helps in many ways. Like you said, definitely you get some cash back which you could use for buying new. At the same time, you don't have that guilt. Because a lot of people, I don't think they are trying to resell it just because they want money out of it. I think more people out there are conscious about what they are buying and what kind of impact they are having on the society, on the environment, and all that. So that's where I think is more ROI in terms of all this activity. So this is another thing which every thought leader today says, don't be product centric, become customer centric. So, and again, it's a very confusing term like sustainability. What does it even mean, customer centric? If I'm going to be customer centric, does it mean that I should work at lower margins, give them discounts, or what does it even mean? Tell us about what do you think about being customer centric, and how does it play out in your world?
Well, I think for starters, it's essential to being successful is caring about your customer and what she wants. And I would say that, I think it's a little bit too simplistic to say that it's not about a product. I think it's about giving them the product that they want. And I think it's about having a conversation with our customer versus being patronizing to our customer. I'm much more interested in hearing from my customer what they want to wear, what they want to see from us, and giving them to that, than having this old school idea of a designer that puts a collection on a runway and says, here you are. That to me is much less interesting. And of course we do runway shows and lookbooks and all these things, but it's based on customer feedback and a lot of customer data. So that's something that I think is keeping our customer in a conversation. I mean, I'll give you an example, very recently, we do a lot of collaborations, which also keeps our customer very engaged, because we're bringing in, customers that may have never heard of us, through this partnership with another customer base. And, we're looking to do, a sort of underwear collaboration. And there's many different companies, that would be interested or that we're talking to. And, we're like, why don't we ask our customers? So I talk to my store teams, they get on the phone and they call their top, 20 customers and say, what brands do you think are interesting right now? Who do you want to see Ganni partnering with? And then I get a list of brands that I already know my customers want us to work with. So, there's something about having that sort of conversation with customers that it's very simple, but it's something like that customer that told me that they like to work with these brands, 100% will be in line to get that partnership because they had a part of it. They had a hand in that conversation. So, I think it's those types of small, easy things, honestly, that I think keep our customers super engaged and keep them, coming back for more to be a part of what we're doing and to be a part of sort of like the value system that we're building.
Yeah, this is fantastic because on face of it, seems like it's a really complex thing to do would be being customer centric because, when I would imagine it, it would be like, something very complex service to run and then crunching of data and I don't know what, but like you made it really simple that, hey, we need to just talk to our people, talk to our customers, get input and just act upon it. It's so, definitely, I'm sure it must be difficult to get it done though, but you definitely make it look simple to me.
It wasn't that difficult. It's just about, and it's also just about being humble. I think there's something about being humble and a little bit vulnerable, and I was a store manager for a long time. If I call my top customer, I'm like, what do you think? Like, should we do this or this? There's something very authentic in that. And I think a customer appreciates it and they feel part of it. They feel part of Ganni, the Ganni team. So I think it's long-term loyalty that I think you get when you have that sort of conversation.
Yeah, I totally agree with you because now they know that our inputs were considered and they are part of the whole direction. So definitely that's amazing. Similarly, we've seen that a lot of customers now, especially your customers, I'm sure, are more digital savvy these days, and a lot of them are visiting stores, but then many of them are browsing your catalog on their phone and on your website, and then making their buy list, and then who knows how they even place the order. Sometimes they walk in the store, but other times they might place an order on phone. So what do you think about all this BOPIS, BORIS, especially return in stores, right? So tell us about, how are you bringing your store or your brand to the customers? Because today customers are all over and they getting used to being brands being available to them wherever they are. So what is your take on it, and how are you approaching this?
I am trying to be everywhere my customer wants to buy us, frankly. And that starts, within wholesale even. I think wholesale has been a little bit overlooked these last couple of years as DTC is like the big buzz. Everyone wants to be DTC. Wholesale is an amazing tool to get, especially in a country like the US where it's, 50 little countries all smashed together. Wholesale has been an incredible tool for us to be able to get into these little cities with an extremely active customer base or a very loyal customer base to these smaller boutiques. That's a tool that we've been using, I think we started within wholesale in 2016, and that's something that I still use today, and it's something that's not going away for us is our wholesale network. Outside of that, and being able to get into these smaller cities where we probably would never have our own retail stores, we're doing all the things you're mentioning, BOPIS, BORIS, all the omni-channel, techniques and initiatives, the single customer view. We're doing all that. There's onboarding, issues. There's people in store that don't want to take online returns. And, all of this, and those are more like operational struggles of just, these personalities. They're like, I didn't sell that. I'm not going to take that back. It's trying to get above that and seeing the business as a little bit higher as far as you've just gotten a customer into the store that would have never come. So how about you turn that customer into that's a swap now, or they're returning something and buying something new, and maybe they're returning that and they're buying 2 new things, So now we're sort of engaging the teams in the stores, that are working on, commission basis and those things. Now, how do we activate that person in store to say, if this person's bringing back something from online, I can make double if I can turn that person into a buying customer right now. Then it kind of changes the conversation for them a little bit. It makes them a bit more excited. But to your point, there's many struggles with all the BORIS and the BOPIS and all these acronyms that I'm trying to get my brain around currently. But to your point, I am trying to be everywhere my customer is, and I have no issue saying that. I'm not trying to be an ultra exclusive brand that people can't get their hands on. I think that's super boring. I want to be inclusive. I want to be available. I want to give my customer what they want. And I think that's super fun, rather than being this sort of closed conversation of this ultra exclusivity and this, a designer that gives something and you like it or you don't. That's very old school to me.
Awesome. In the process of sharing your experience, you gave us some really good tips on how we can get our associates excited about returns that they are getting from the people who actually bought that item online. And that's definitely, all those tips that you gave are going to be an interesting one for a lot of our listeners, because that is a challenge that almost every retailer is facing. So, definitely your tips would help. And I think, with this, we can conclude our conversation today. So before we end, definitely, is there anything on your mind that you want our listeners to know? Anything from your experience in retail, or if nothing, then, I'm really interested to know if you want to give them some tips on being responsible.
I would just implore people to not be afraid of it, not be afraid of the costs of it. I think long term, the costs of us not moving toward a more responsible, way of working are going to be way worse and way more costly for us. I also find, within our business, the bigger we get, the more global we get, the more responsible and scalable it becomes. So, the costs of something more responsible for us are actually coming down, the more that we can get customers into this and the more into this mindset. So, my advice would be to just go for it and try some new things and see what works and see what doesn't. And, not be afraid of the costs of something like this, because it's much worse for us not to invest now.
Awesome. Thank you very much for those tips. It's important. We need people who are leading this path, because it's hard. It's unknown. People are scared. People like me are definitely scared. So thanks for the strong tips and great tips. And I'm sure if something comes up and if I'm scared, I'll call you.
Just text me. Don't worry. I got you.
Thank you very much. Thanks all our audience for listening, and I'm sure you enjoyed our conversation today here. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
That's it for this episode of the Customer Centric Retailing Podcast. If you like what you heard, you can subscribe on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and Google Podcast. Please rate and review and recommend to a friend or a fellow retail fanatic. This podcast is presented by Hotworks Commerce.